Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales, a sleep aid podcast aimed at helping you to get a restful night. Do you find your mind plagued with the stresses of modern life, especially when the lights are out and you're trying to get a good night's sleep? Do you find your mind spinning and churning with the stresses of events of the day and memories that you'd rather forget? Follow my voice down the path towards a restful night. Listen to me tell a story that will keep your mind from wandering to your daytime problems, the ones that you can't solve right now and will be easier to solve with a solid night's rest. Listen to my voice and allow yourself to drift, following the twists and turns but slowly letting go into the deep night, the restful sleep. Before we go any further tonight, I need to take care of some business. It's the sort of thing that usually happens at the end of most podcasts, but since I'm hoping you're asleep by the time we get that far, I need to mention the stuff right now. Firstly, you can find this podcast, all the episodes, as well as blog posts, musings, and sometimes production notes on our website, sleepytimetales.net. Comments, questions, suggestions can all be emailed to contact@sleepytimetales.net. You can find links to all of our relevant social media on the website, but you can go straight from here to our Twitter, which is @SleepyTimeTales, and Facebook, which is @SleepyTimeTales Podcast. I have been getting some rather nice feedback, not a lot, but it's starting to come in, and I appreciate everything that I hear from people. It's nice to know that people are being helped. This podcast is definitely not for everybody, so if you're somebody that I reach, let me know. It feels good to know that we're helping out. It's also nice to see, looking through some of my stats, that I've got a few subscribers, which, while listeners is nice, people who actually subscribe, who want to hear what you have to say. I just want to give a shout out to you folks. You are extra special. So thank you for the support, thank you for the kind words, and thank you for your subscriptions already. They're all much appreciated. We also have a channel on YouTube where I will be putting up simple visualized enhanced versions of the episodes for your enjoyment. Some people like to leave the YouTube playing in the background, and flashing lights may help a little bit. You can search for Sleepy Time Tales podcast there, or follow the link in the show notes. Also in the show notes on the website is a link to the podcast newsletter. If you're interested in hearing up-to-date info and news, and I'm not too sure what else, maybe specials or products that I think may help people get a restful night, subscribe, and I'll promise not to spam you. I'll only send stuff out that I think is genuinely interesting. Now, if you're enjoying the show and or finding it useful, if it's helping you a couple of nights a week, or if you're like me and you leave your sleep aid podcast running in the background so the droning voices can sing you to sleep, it would be much appreciated if you could give me a little bit of support to help some of the costs. I was going to hold off a few months on starting a Patreon because I wanted to have a body of work to justify it first. But Patreon recently announced some changes that will make it more expensive and less useful for new creators starting campaigns after May 2019. So I figured I'd just hold my nose and jump in and get started. So if you're interested, it's there. If it ever reaches a stage where there's enough for it to be compelling, it's there for you whenever you're ready, but no pressure. But the show is free, so what reason could you have to actually pay me for it? There are a couple of reasons. Firstly, maybe you'd just like to. It's a service I provide mainly to help people, and if you think that it's something you'd like to support and you're finding it useful, that may be reason enough for you. But if you'd like to get a bit of a sweetener, I do have some rewards levels available on the Patreon. There are 3 at the moment. I'm keeping things quite simple. If you can afford $1 a month, I will genuinely appreciate that. I live in a country where $1 is actually a usable amount of money. So if you want to back me at $1 a month, I will, with your permission, list your name or alias on a thank you page on the Sleepy Time Tales website, sleepytimetales.net. Now, while a single $1 is genuinely a usable amount of money, add 4 more to make 5, and we have a very useful amount of money. To thank you for reaching that deeply, I'll provide you with an RSS feed of episodes that don't have this whole down to business section in it, where I'm rattling a can asking you for money. Also, while I don't have any advertising on the show, if that ever changes, any $5 and up patrons will receive ad-free episodes in their custom feed. If you really love what I do and can kick $10 a month in my direction, you will really get one extra episode every month. I'll do a full movie recap review that will be chosen in a poll by users. If I can come up with anything else that is worthwhile for higher level patrons, I will, but right now $10 is the cap. You can find the Patreon at patreon.com/sleepytimetales or patreon.sleepytimetales.net. If a monthly commitment is a bit too much for you, which is also understandable, I do have a tip jar up on my website where you can throw a bit of spare change my way whenever you're so inclined. And again, I'll repeat myself, literally a single dollar is useful. If that is what you can afford and you feel it isn't going to help, be assured it will, and it will be appreciated. Another way you can help without costing yourself anything extra is checking out the affiliate links on many episodes and on the website. I link to items that are related to the theme of an episode in the show description, and the website has links to sleep aid podcasts, appliances, and even some very nice looking beds. So take a look if you're on the market. Another way you can help without actually costing yourself any money is rate and review the podcast on whatever your service of choice is. The show can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. I was using SoundCloud, but I ran out of space on the free service, so I think I'm going to cut that until I can cover a subscription on that. But of course, if you found it, you already know where to find it. A 5-star review will get the show in front of more people, and the more people who find it, the more people have a chance of helping find a good night's sleep. Also, any interesting or funny reviews that I get, I will read out at the end of an episode. So, and also, if this show helps you find a good night's sleep, it may help others. So, other than reviews, also please share the show on your social media or to any friends or family you think it may help. Even if it doesn't help you, it may help somebody else, because everyone who suffers sleepless nights is usually open to options. Even if it doesn't necessarily work for one person, it may work for someone else. The music in this episode and all episodes thus far is Un Désert by Kumiko. Their music is available on the Free Music Archive. I've linked their website and their Patreon in the show notes, as they have some very cool stuff released under various different names that I definitely would recommend checking out, especially if you need music for media of your own. That's enough of business. Now back to the fun part. So what exactly is Sleepy Time Tales, and what is the point of a sleep aid podcast? To answer your question, let me start with a common problem. In this day and age, in this year of 2019, the 21st century, sleep is becoming a difficult thing to come by. We often find ourselves lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling with our minds spinning, and emotions are in turmoil with the anxieties of modern life. Are you one of those people that wakes up in the middle of the night and you find yourself not quite able to go back to sleep at 3 a.m.? I'm here to try and help with these problems. My name is Dave, and I'm your narrator, here to talk you into a restful night. I'm someone I've been insomniac pretty much my whole life. I've struggled to sleep ever since I was a baby. I used to keep my parents awake many, many nights for years, and even once I got old enough not to bother them anymore, I still struggled to sleep. Even at 6 and 7, I used to lie in the dark and dream of wait for the morning. Something I discovered, unfortunately, rather late in life was that droning male voices have a tendency to put me into a deep sleep. I discovered this when I was listening to podcasts at bedtime, and after a while I eventually found out that sleep aid podcasts are actually a thing. There are quite a few of them that read old stories out, and there's even some for adults and many for children. But I tried one out that worked really well for me. It was specially designed for the purpose of distracting the restless mind, and while it worked very well for me, when I recommended it to others, they didn't like the narrator's voice. I didn't discover anything else quite like it that I could find. So I wondered if I could make an alternative with my droning voice, and here it is. This for new listeners, the purpose of this intro is to introduce you to the concepts of what I'm trying to do here, how I'm trying to help you to sleep. And for people who have been joining me for a while so far, this may be something like an opportunity for you to start getting yourself into the mindset to help you fall asleep. Now is the time for you to wind down, turn out the lights, grab yourself a glass of water, and prepare yourself for the experience of sleeping as we prepare to build a safe space, a mental nest for you to settle into. The idea is that you listen to me as I tell you tonight's story, to help you listen, and that you listen to, and it helps stop the spinning mind that prevents you, like me many nights, from having a restful night's sleep. The story that I will tell is going to be kind of boring, and the plan is that it engages your attention just enough to stop your mind from spinning into overdrive, as happens to us insomniacs at bedtime. Tonight's story, you probably will have seen, is I'm telling basically the life story of the Greek hero Bellerophon, most famous for taming the hippogriff Pegasus and defeating a monstrous chimera, although those weren't the only adventures he had in his life. They're just the ones that got the good press. So they tell you a ancient Greek myth in a way that hopefully is not too exciting, that helps you to drift off to sleep. It's important, though, as you listen to the story, that you don't try and force the attempt to sleep. Allow the process to happen naturally. Just sort of keep a light mental grip on my voice and allow the natural need to sleep to slowly wind you down. I'm hoping that you're asleep before I get to the end of the episode, but don't feel pressurized. It may not work on the first night. It may very well take a few nights for you to get used to listening to my voice. My accent may be strange to you, or maybe one episode isn't long enough. It's very important, though, that you relax. If you're new to the show and prone to late nights lying staring at the ceiling, it may take you a while, even a few days, for this to work for you. So listen to the sound of my voice as I tell you a tale. Queue up a few episodes or just run through the backlog. What I generally do with sleep podcasts is I just let them stream all night. I lie down in the dark with my earbuds in and let them run. Sometimes when I wake up at 3 a.m. the stream is still running and I just let the voices waft me back to sleep. Sometimes even when I wake up just before my alarm goes off, I carry on listening and I fall right back asleep. I've got to tell you now, if that sometimes is the most restful part of my night. There's something about allowing yourself to relax completely right before the alarm that just is very deeply satisfying. And so you have the basic idea. You relax and you lie in the dark and while I tell you a tale. So relax, dear listener. My nighttime friend who's elected to lie in the dark listening to my voice. It's been a couple of months I've been doing this show now, and that always sounds a little bit strange. That you would invite me, a stranger from somewhere in the world, probably far away, to speak to you in your sleep. To speak you to sleep. But I can promise you that you'll always be safe with me. I'm here to help you to relax, to improve your life in a small way. Or, maybe it's not such a small way. As I said, people don't sleep very well these days, and it makes modern life a lot harder. So I'm here to do my small part to help you in a big way. I'm here to help you to face tomorrow and the day after, well rested and better able to cope and process. I'm also going to avoid, too much reference to the bad parts of modern life. These things are already keeping you and me awake, so I'll only share stories that relax or make life better, even if only in small ways. I believe very strongly in the benefits of kindness. I want to be kind to you. I want to share kindness with you. I need you to be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up or rebuke yourself over not sleeping. Don't get tense if you just can't get yourself over the edge of sleep, even with me in your ears trying to help. Frustration is one of the great enemies of a good night's sleep. The intent with this podcast is to help to short-circuit that frustration, to distract the feeling that we get when we blame ourselves for not being able to let go and drift into the dark. So take a breath. Forgive the fact that you can't sleep and let my voice wash over you and under you. Take another breath. Imagine the warm darkness rising up, inviting you to sleep and to a better life starting tomorrow. And if you can't let go, forgive yourself and try again tomorrow. If you've had a life of insomnia, sleep is something like an enemy, but it is not your enemy. It's a natural process that we have been pulled away from by stress and life and progress, which leads us to shine bright lights in our eyes at all hours. I'm here to work with you, to create a safe space, a cocoon in which you can curl up and allow nature to take its course. So if you're still with me, thank you for staying. If you're already asleep, we'll chat again soon. And of course, you aren't hearing me except maybe in a dream. So tonight's story will start now. Tales of Bellerophon. Bellerophon is, in the 21st century, he may not be one of the most known names of Greek heroes. He's not in the sort of level of Odysseus or Hercules or I've gone blank, Achilles, the great heroes of the Trojan War, the great demigod, son of Zeus. Bellerophon was a demigod. He was a son of the god of the ocean Poseidon and Eurynome, who was the wife of King Glaucus of Corinth. In his youth, he was known for capturing the winged horse Pegasus. Winged horses are usually referred to as hippogriffs, if people don't just always call them Pegasi. My daughter watches My Little Pony, and I find it amusing that of the three types of ponies you get, a Pegasus is the flying pony, which I suppose hippogriff is a funny, strange-sounding word, so maybe it's not quite as appealing for 5-year-olds. So as I said, Bellerophon he was believed to be initially the son of King Glaucus of Corinth, but the rumor till later on in his life was that the queen Eurynome was unfaithful to her king and actually bore Bellerophon, but this father was Poseidon. Well, he was a prince, so he had a fairly comfortable life through most of his life. He was particularly well known as a great equestrian, a very skilled rider of horses, and one of his dreams was to have Pegasus as his mount. What greater mark of a horseman could there be than being the only person to actually ride a horse that could fly? Bellerophon, like many demigods and sons of kings and sons of gods in mythology, was rather arrogant. As I said, Pegasus is often used as a general term for winged horses. Pegasus itself was actually the name of a specific one of these creatures. The Greeks actually knew them as Pteropus. That's the name for the species of winged horses. Pegasus is depicted as white in color usually, and funny enough, Greek mythology is like really weird. Is a child of Poseidon and the Gorgon Medusa. So Bellerophon was obsessed with taming and riding his own half-brother. So these things were weird. Greek mythology really is deeply strange, especially looking at it from a few thousand years later, from 21st century sensibilities. So Pegasus is, this is all quite strange. Just as I'm reading the story, is like really peculiar. Pegasus is a child of the Olympiad god Poseidon. He was foaled by Medusa on her death when Perseus decapitated her. So that's quite deeply strange. The Greco-Roman poets wrote about the ascent of Pegasus to heaven after his birth and his obeisance. I've actually never said that word out loud, to Zeus, king of the gods, who instructed him to bring lightning and thunder from Olympus. Yeah, it's actually quite interesting because, we know Pegasus as a winged horse, but Pegasus was really quite a powerful divine creature himself. He was the friend of the Muses, and he created the Hippocrene, the fountain on Mount Helicon, which is quite a significant mountain in Greek mythology, located near Corinth. Obviously, proximity to Corinth, where he lived and operated, was one of the reasons Bellerophon knew that he existed. There are a few different stories about how Bellerophon captured Pegasus. The most common one is that Bellerophon was told by Polyaedos, a famous seer, son of Coriolanus, he was instructed to sleep in the temple of Athena when the goddess visited him at night and presented him with a golden bridle. The next morning he woke up with the bridle in his hand. He found Pegasus drinking at a spring, and he caught him using the divine bridle and tamed him. So yeah, quite an interesting creature in and of himself. Pegasus wasn't merely just a flying horse. It was as I said, a great and powerful and divine creature in his own right. So that really is quite interesting. So anyway, this was supposed to be the story of Bellerophon, not Pegasus. But, it's probably helpful to know a bit more about Pegasus. So Bellerophon used the bridle he received from Athena in his dream to capture his magical half-brother, the flying horse. That was actually the reason that he did this. There's actually more to the story in the first place. Bellerophon was a young man who, like many sons of kings, had dreamed of great adventures. When he was going about in his useful search for adventure, he met the King Perseus, who was a sea god, the son-in-law of the king of Lycia, and also one of the sons of Poseidon in some tellings of the myth. Bellerophon I think he was a little bit of an innocent, because he thought he was getting on very well with Proteus, but he didn't realize that Proteus was jealous of him because he was his half-brother, and Proteus believed that Bellerophon maybe was more blessed than he was. There's a lot of jealousy in divine sons and brothers, and Proteus was a king, but Bellerophon also was a son of a king and could be one on his own rights one day. Proteus was aware that Bellerophon had a fondness and urge for adventure. So what Proteus decided to do was he sent him with a sealed letter to his in-laws in the kingdom of Lycia. Bellerophon arrived in Lycia after an ocean journey. When he arrived in Lycia, he discovered that every night a chimera, a very famous mythological monster with the head of a lion, the tail of a dragon, was terrorizing the town, taking women, children, and livestock every night and leaving their bones on the mountain. The creature was rather horrifying, and the people of Lycia lived in great fear. Bellerophon didn't know that the sealed letter that he carried to give to his in-laws, to Proteus's in-laws rather, was a demand that Bellerophon would be killed. So he innocently went along and he handed the letter to the king of Lycia. The king, though, decided that rather than just killing Bellerophon as he stood in front of him, he would send him to defeat the chimera, believing that Bellerophon would never come back alive. Bellerophon was, as I said, he was a very excitable young man with a thirst for adventure, and judging by most of the stories, not the smartest young man. So he was very excited at the prospect of hunting this vicious monster. And so at the prospect of hunting for the monster, he decided to go see Polyaedos, the wisest man in Lycia. It's at this point where Bellerophon discovers that for his own benefit he would need to find and tame Pegasus, because Polyaedos told him that he would need the winged horse as to help him in his battle. As I said, there are a few different story variations on how Bellerophon managed to get Pegasus. The one that I mentioned earlier as one of the most widely accepted ones was about Bellerophon falling asleep in the temple of Athena, and then Athena appeared to him in his sleep, gave him a divine bridle, which he used to capture and tame Pegasus. Some of the stories were that Athena tamed and brought Pegasus to Bellerophon herself. That actually parallels some other stories where Athena tamed Pegasus and brought him to Perseus to help him on some of his quests. One other theory is that Poseidon himself, the Bellerophon's father, secret father, who was also famous for being able to tame horses, brought Pegasus to Bellerophon. But as I said, the most common tale is the one that basically combined most of them, about Athena giving him the bridle and the directions to the well from where Pegasus used to drink water. So I'm going to accept that story. Bellerophon woke up in the morning after spending the night in the temple of Athena. He was amazed to find when he woke up that he still was holding the bridle that he dreamed about, the golden divine bridle of Athena. So he went to where Athena told him he would find Pegasus coming to drink, and he waited for a while until Pegasus came around to drink from the divine spring. He waited for Pegasus to kneel so he could jump onto his back, and he slipped the bridle onto Pegasus' head. While the bridle was divine, Pegasus also was a very willful creature and also divine in his own right, so he fought very hard to throw Bellerophon off. He wasn't very fond of the idea of being ridden by a human or demigod of any kind. He was the wild and savage and divine Pegasus, after all. Pegasus flew into the air and tried to throw Bellerophon off. Would have shaken himself around and tried to turn over and bucked and sprung and jumped and dived. But ultimately he realized he had an experienced and skillful rider, and he surrendered and was subdued. There is another different version of the myth that says that Pegasus voluntarily kneeled in front of Bellerophon when he saw the bridle, but I prefer the idea that Pegasus, who was a creature, a very divine and powerful creature himself, wouldn't have just kneeled at a mere presentation of a divine trinket. It seems almost unjust that Pegasus would put himself through that for very little, or without some kind of resistance. And so, on his mighty flying steed Pegasus, Bellerophon went to fight the Chimera. A common weapon among the Greeks at the time was long spears, so probably Bellerophon would have used something like that from horseback to keep him away from the flames and the claws of the monster. And using Pegasus' strength and speed and ability to fly and come at different angles, the monster would not have had a chance against the divine power of Bellerophon himself and Pegasus to help him. And so after the battle, Bellerophon killed the fire-breathing Chimera, and Pegasus and Bellerophon returned to the king of Lycia. I've got the name of the town right, it's been a while. Bellerophon went back to the king of Lycia, presented the head of the Chimera as a trophy, and he was given the king's daughter for his wife. Bellerophon also later became the king of Lycia after the death of that king. But Bellerophon was, he had a restless nature, and he had a drive for adventure, and as I think we've established, he wasn't particularly smart. So he got the urge to push the envelope again, and he said he would ride Pegasus to Mount Olympus to visit the gods. This story is actually why the tale of Bellerophon is often used to tell people or suggest to people not to be overly arrogant, because no matter how great a hero you are, if you try to come knocking on the door of the gods, they're not going to be very welcoming. So Bellerophon mounted his friend and his steed and his half-brother Pegasus. That really is very strange. And they flew into the air to the top to try to get to the top of the great Mount Olympus, the home of the gods. Zeus, being the kind that didn't really like too much human arrogance without his own aid, sent a fly towards the incoming guest. The fly stung Pegasus on the rump, and Pegasus was stung and disturbed, and he threw Bellerophon off. Obviously, Bellerophon, despite being a great horseman, wasn't expecting his friend Pegasus to throw him off, and he fell from a great height and he fell to the ground. The story tells that Athena tried to help Bellerophon a bit and softened the ground when he landed on it. He did survive the fall, but he was crippled and lonely, and he spent the rest of his life going around, hobbling around, trying to find his precious friend Pegasus. Problem was, he never found Pegasus, because Pegasus was allowed to live on Mount Olympus because Zeus had allowed him there before. Zeus welcomed him and kept him as his favorite and most important steed, and the story tells that Pegasus was loyal to Zeus until his last day. Pegasus may have been Bellerophon's mountain friend for a short while in his life, but ultimately he was still Zeus's horse before and above and over anything else. So that's the story of Bellerophon, his arrogance and his fall after his great achievements of killing the Chimera and taming the flying horse Pegasus. But I figured let's take a look at a few other characters out of the story as well. The wise man that I mentioned, the wisest man in Lycia, Polyidus was another way of referring to him, was the son of Coriolanus and a famous seer from Corinth. He was a descendant of another seer, Melampus. So, the ability to see and great wisdom was pretty much a family business. One other well-known myth about Polyidus is the story that deals with him saving the life of Glaucus. Glaucus was the son of King Minos of Crete, who was playing with a mouse and disappeared. The Curetes, I hope I get some of these pronunciations right, the Curetes or Corybantes were crested dancers who worshipped the goddess Sibyl. They told Minos, "A marvelous creature has been born among you. Whoever finds the true likeness of this creature will also find the child." They believed that this was in reference to a newborn calf in Minos' herd. The calf changed color from white to red to black 3 times a day, which must have been a sign of something divine. Polyidus observed that this was similar to the opening of the fruit of the mulberry or the blackberry. So Minos sent Polyidus to find Glaucus. Polyidus saw an owl driving bees away from a wine cellar in Minos' palace. Inside the wine cellar, he found a cask of honey with the child Glaucus dead inside. Minos demanded that Glaucus be brought back to life and shut Polyidus up in the wine cellar with a sword. When a snake appeared, Polyidus killed the snake with a sword. Another snake came after the first, and after seeing it dead, it left and returned with a herb, which brought the first snake back to life. Polyidus got some samples of the herb and used it to resurrect the child. King Minos refused to let Polyidus leave Crete until Polyidus taught Glaucus the art of divination. Polyidus did teach Glaucus the art, but at the last second upon leaving, he asked Glaucus to spit in his mouth. That is extremely gross, and I'm sorry that I'm reading the story out loud. Sorry about that. Glaucus did so and forgot everything that he had been taught. Well, that's quite a bizarre story, to go through all the effort of teaching the kid and then wipe his mind, essentially. So I suppose at the end of the day, he didn't really want to teach the lessons, and probably potentially quite dangerous in the wrong hands. The other significant character, of course, is the ocean god Perseus. He was a subject of the sea god Poseidon, and it's believed he either lived on the island of Pharos near the mouth of the Isle of Nile River, or the island of Carpathus between Crete and Rhodes. Proteus was all-seeing and all-knowing, but he was very jealous with his knowledge. He didn't like telling people what he knew. Those who wanted to find out anything from him had to find him and tie him up while he was sleeping during the day. Proteus also could assume all sorts of shapes and would try very hard to escape after being caught, but if he was held, he would return to his shape and give the answer before plunging into the sea. Because Proteus could assume any kind of shape, he was seen as a symbol of the original matter from which the world was created. The word protean means of which is changeable in shape or form, and that is derived from the god Proteus. On editing this podcast, I actually came to the realization that firstly I've come up really short on time, so I need to pad it a little bit, and secondly I didn't really go into much detail about the villain of the piece, the enemy, the monster, the chimera, because it's actually quite an interesting thing. The monsters of Greek mythology, most of them share similar common roots. So if you learn about one thing, you tend to learn about quite a lot at the same time. And this is a story full of strange names and strange creatures and unexpected relationships. I mean, after all, we did have Bellerophon, the half-brother of the flying horse Pegasus, so yeah, it can't get any stranger than that, can it? So let's take a look. Let's learn a little bit about the chimera. A chimera in Greek mythology is a monstrous fire-breathing creature. It's usually a hybrid of different types of animals. The traditional representation is the head of a lion with the body and head of a goat sticking up from the middle, and a tail, usually a dragon or snake's tail, and sometimes even represented with a snake's head. I'm not sure why they went with a goat as 1/3 of this creature. Goats can be vicious. A head stuck in the middle of the body doesn't really seem that much of a threat, especially when you've got a lion on one end and a snake's head on the other. The only surviving reference to the chimera is actually in the Iliad, Homer's work about the Trojan War. Homer described the creature as being very ferocious and having they had 3 heads, one a grim-eyed lion, a dragon in the back, and in the middle a goat, all breathing forth a fearful blast of blazing fire. At least that was according to the reports of Bellerophon after he slayed the vicious chimera. The sort of origins of many of the monsters in Greek mythology are quite often shared. The parents of the chimera were Typhon, a monstrous giant, snake giant, one of the most deadly creatures in Greek mythology. Typhon was the son of the Titans Gaia and Tartarus, although one source has Typhon as the son of Hera, without a father, while another makes Typhon the offspring of Cronus, the ancient father of the Titans and the father of the Greek gods. Typhon and his mate Echidna were the progenitors of many famous monsters. Echidna was a half-woman, half-snake who lived alone in a cave. Together they had many monstrous offspring, including Cerberus, the Sphinx, the Nemean lion, the Gorgon, who was the mother of Medusa, and Scylla, famous from Scylla and Charybdis, the great oceanic monsters of the Odyssey. So, yeah, the origins of these creatures are quite fascinating, for various definitions of the term fascinating, obviously, but yeah. So we had Typhon and Echidna creating half of the pantheon of monstrous creatures of Greek mythology, if not even more than half of it. Quite often, creatures from mythology had a basis in something in reality. The lived near Lycia. The one thing I never covered in their story originally was that Lycia is in Asia Minor, which is what we now know as Turkey. The area that in what is now today the Lycian Way in southwest Turkey has an area of permanent gas vents that can still be found by hikers. So it's quite possible that those gas vents and flames and burning methane were of monstrous origin. These fires were landmarks in ancient times and were used for navigation by sailors. The phenomenon of the chimera in mythology has actually been passed on to not a similar concept, but a concept in genetics of genetic chimeras. It's a rare occurrence where one organism, often a mouse or something of that sort, actually has cells from two organisms. It happens basically with two eggs or two zygotes combined into one creature that is then born. You will often find some chimeric creatures that will look almost like half of one animal and half another one. I've seen chimeric cats, which are actually quite cute, like literally split in half. It's a tabby on one side and a black cat on the other side. It's even chimeric. Some humans, it's very rare. Humans can be chimeras as well. It is very unusual. One thing I've been promising for a while is that if anybody leaves any 5-star or any decent reviews on iTunes or the likes, that I would read it out aloud. It's taken me a while, but I finally figured out how to read the reviews on the various iTunes stores, because iTunes only shows you your local region, and as yet I haven't got any South African reviews. But I found a service, mypodcastreviews.com, that compiles them from the different iTunes stores, and I found that I had a very nice review, a 5-star from Louise Wool in the USA. Sorry Louise, it's been nearly a month and I didn't realize the review was there. So as I promised, Louise says that she's been investigating several sleep podcasts and this one is honestly great. Everyone's different, but definitely worth investigating. So thank you Louise, that's very kind. As I've said before, I think not every podcast is going to work for everybody. Different formats might be more suitable for other people. So if this one works for you, thank you and welcome. If not, there's some other good options out there as well. One thing Louise mentions is PS, you might want to change it up from Sleep With Me podcast, which is a fair point because Sleep With Me works very well for me. So my format's largely based on that, but over time I'm sure I'll find my own voice. So Louise and any other listeners, I hope you carry on listening and pick up any changes as they go along. And this is a reminder to anybody else listening, subscribe to get updates as they happen, and rate and review, and then YouTube will have your reviews read out on the episode. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Sleepy Time Tales podcast, the sleep aid podcast designed around a bedtime story to help you to get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday, so to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week. So make sure to subscribe on whatever service you use so that you get new episodes and maybe even the odd bonus whenever they come out. A reminder that the music for tonight is Un Desire Bakumiku. Check out their work on their website and their Patreon, which you will find linked in the show notes. Good night and sweet dreams.